Bueno, vamos a partir esta interesante taller que a modo gringo lo hemos llamado Broadback Lunch, que es una tradición de las universidades de alto prestigio. En esta oportunidad vamos a estar con el profesor Róbert Vancel, va a moderar todo el conversatorio el profesor Alfonso Dingemans. Ahora voy a decir unas palabras en inglés de recepción del profesor. Thank you very much, Professor Vancel, for having here, for accepting our invitations to have this very interesting, meeting with our students. They are from the 4th and 5th grade degree in our undergraduate program, and also we have the company with our colleagues in our department. So thank you very much for being here. I pass the word to Professor Alfonso Dingemans.
Thank you very much. Well, very welcome you all to this Broadback Lunch, which is a novelty for our department. And so I'm very pleased to introduce you to Professor Robert Vancel from the University of Maté-Belle. He has a PhD in international relations. He has also other roles within the university, but we will explore those in the coming days of this week. We have a very tight schedule with all those interesting activities. This is the first one, and Professor Vancel will be talking us about the impact of the war in Ukraine on Central Europe. Remember that Professor Vancel is from the Republic of Slovakia, not Czechoslovakia, Slovakia. And without any further ado, the floor is yours, Professor Vancel. We're very pleased.
Thank you very much for a warm welcome. And as you probably noticed, I don't speak any Spanish, or my Spanish is limited to hola, soy Slovaco. So, or soy Checo if you happen to see me climbing the hills near Santiago. Anyway, I'm so glad to be here and to talk about various aspects of political or issues related to political life in Central Europe. And we'll start with something rather dark and not very positive in a sense, which is a war in Ukraine. And I would like to start with maybe more informal way, and as your region, I would say so, of South America is quite exotic to us in Central Europe. I can imagine that Central Europe might be as distant as maybe exotic for you, or for Dutch even. So maybe I would like to start with a question on you. Do you have any idea on what's going on with the war in Ukraine, when it started? How does it evolve over time? Let's say from 2014 till this day. Like, what's supposed to be the reason for the war? Do you know? There have been some claims from Russia, let's say, why they entered the conflict.
Who would like to start? I know you know, so don't be afraid. This is your.
Yeah, I'm not testing you. I would just like to get an overview on
breaking the ice.
On your knowledge.
Okay?
Yeah.
This is not a test question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
He does it on this. Well, if you like, but the idea is to have the conversation in English. But to start off, say it in Spanish. Spanish, and I will translate it into English.
Yo recuerdo en el 2014, Rusia había anexado la península de Crimea. Hubo una especie de guerra inicial en 2014.
Okay, he knows about the annexation of the Crimean region and the invasion.
Okay, great. That's something to begin with. Yeah. So, has any one of you been to Central Europe before? to Europe in general?
Zero.
Where to have you been? Spain? Spain?
Italy.
Switzerland, Italy. Okay, great. So you avoided the most interesting region. But hopefully you will have a chance to go to Central Europe or Slovakia as well. So to start with, some say that this war, or we are talking about war in the sense since February 2022. But as your colleague said, it all started way before in 2014. And what happened was that Ukraine was supposed to sign an agreement with European Union, which obviously Russia wasn't in favor because it would kind of drive Ukraine towards European Union, towards Western structures, Western markets, and Russia, or President Putin, he didn't like to see that coming. So they pushed on the former Ukrainian president, and he tried to back off from the deal. But the thing is that people in Ukraine were pro-deal, right? They wanted this agreement to happen because they were able to travel to European Union. Many of them studied in European Union, so they see that the life in general and conditions are better. You can travel freely, the jobs are well paid, you earn more. So they associated European Union with some positive future prospects for their country, especially the Western Ukrainian, because Western Ukraine is, we can talk about especially Western Ukraine and this region. They are less developed part of the Ukraine. They were poorer, and in this Eastern Ukrainian regions, it was ruled by oligarchs. They happen to have a control over big companies and whole industries. So they keep their regions well in order, to say. People were satisfied because they provided for them. They shared their wealth. There were no big companies in Western Ukraine, so no oligarchs there, and therefore organized crime was able to kind of develop there. So people, especially in Western Ukraine, were super pro-European. And after President tried to back off from the deal, from the agreement, they started protests. So maybe you've heard about Maidan protests, where people were fighting literally life and death on the streets of Kiev and many other cities. And when Vladimir Putin saw that he will probably not be able to hold the current Ukrainian president in power, he won't help him, he won't be able to help him, he realized that Ukraine is on its way to European Union and probably later on to NATO. He started occupation of Crimea. Why is Crimea important? Well, now it's peninsula. It's quite important because of this town, Sevastopol, in which the Russian Black Sea fleet is stationed. It was under the agreement that even though Crimea is Ukrainian, Russians can have their fleet stationed there. So it was a kind of strategic move for him to occupy the whole peninsula. And then he supported, I should say, uprising or separatist movements in easternmost part of the country. They weren't very pro-European. They wanted somehow to stay in the status quo. And he used this because there were many Russian-speaking citizens living there. So he claimed that he's going to protect them from whatever bad is coming on them from Ukrainian government. And this led into beginning of the conflict. At the very beginning, Russia sent the soldiers there. They were unmarked, without any emblems, nothing. Well, Russian officials call them tourists, so they are on vacation, which is, well, it's novelty in a warfare, to be honest, that some country sends in the troops, which bear no signs, no affiliation. And only after several weeks, they actually they said, okay, those are Russian citizens, but they are still volunteers. They are not sent by Russian government directly. So what was created was a frozen conflict with Crimea occupied. After they seized the Crimea, they did a referendum, which in some cities the turnout was over 100%. This is great. You know, if you have 120% turnout in a referendum, so that's a sign that it's very democratic. And obviously, the results were that citizens of Crimea would like to stay with Russia. It's hard to get different result if you have a gun against your face. So, but still, the referendum was not acknowledged by the most governments of the world. And as for the eastern part of the country, it stayed in a state of frozen conflict. So there was not much of a change as for the border of those separatist regions. They proclaimed themselves to be a republic, even though they were not recognized internationally. And this went on for some time. Until and Ukraine under Petro Poroshenko, they wanted to start some reforms. They wanted to get closer to the EU. They were quite successful, but still people were very disappointed by the slow progress they were making. So then Volodymyr Zelensky came in. Probably. Do you know what he did before he became president? Yes, he was an actor, a comedian actually, quite popular, and he had the show which was called A Servant of the People, where he played president of Ukraine. So this kind of helped him. He was well recognized, and yeah, he got into power, and everybody's like, okay, there's another president of Ukraine. He's kind of funny guy, and well, we'll see what he'll do. But he was very firm in his stance as for the future of Ukraine. He was very pro-European. He also tried to get into NATO as soon as possible, but you cannot get into NATO unless you have resolved territorial issues. So there's no way of getting into NATO if you have a separatist movement in the east. And if your peninsula or Crimea is occupied, and you still do claim it as your own territory. So, and this went on and on until the violence or the tensions started to rise again after 2020. And in 2021, Russia started to build up in terms of military power on Ukrainian borders. It was criticized, but many experts, analysts thought that, okay, this might be just some power play. They are showing the strength, they're doing some maneuvers on the border, but they won't attack. It's not possible. War of such a scale in Europe in 21st century, unthinkable. Well, you see, if you are determined, so then anything's possible. What happened before the rise of tension was continuous. Russia acknowledged those separatist republics as official countries, which of course caused backlash. And then those republics called for Russian intervention to protect themselves from attacks of Ukrainian forces. And so they did. And they started full-scale invasion on February 24th, 2022. I remember that morning because it was quite scary. I just remember when I woke up, I saw it on all social media. Those videos of people screaming, not knowing what's going on, because there were helicopters and jets and rockets flying all over, and there was shooting going on and bombing. It was very intense, and especially at our university, at my faculty of international relations, we have we have hundreds of Ukrainian students whose families were, from the regions that were caught within the conflict, and fathers of our students were conscripted. Every man in Ukraine from 18 to 60 was banned from leaving country. He had to stay. So the conflict caused a massive migration wave. Millions, I think 4 or 5 millions of Ukrainians moved to the West. Not all of them moved out of the Ukraine, for obviously, but many of them did, which caused huge problems for our government, especially for governments of Slovakia, Poland here, but also Hungary, Romania, Moldavia is kind of special case in this sense. But there was a huge pressure on our borders. You probably know we in European Union we have something called Schengen, which is an area where you can travel freely. You don't need passport. You don't need visas. You can not only travel, but you can do business freely. You can move goods and other things without any taxes, without any barriers. But the thing is that in order to have this, we have to protect our outer border. So this border here, it's only about 90 kilometers long. And one summer I happened to do the maintenance on the border as part of my summer job. And it's heavily protected. There are like fences, military personnel everywhere, cameras. There are drones flying over the border. It's really enormously protected border, and it goes from northernmost, from Poland, from Estonia. It runs down, and yeah. So we had to deal with hundreds of thousands of migrants, mostly women and children, who were coming in with nothing in their hand, just a few bags or luggage. It was catastrophic. But I'll come to migration issues later, if you will. This changed everything. I mean, our government knew that the war will happen. They had information from secret services, especially American ones, and they knew that the war will. Yeah, please. I will have some producto casero as well. Yeah. Yeah, nice. Oh, great. This is some kind
It's a
of
local beverage.
It's a local beverage. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's supposed like strawberry flavor, something like that.
Oh wow, it's very sweet. Not sweeter than Moto from Brazil.
Well, depends.
Yesterday I had one.
It can be sweet.
It was really sweet. But it was nice. Okay, so enjoy your meal, and in case anyone has question, please just raise your hand and ask right away. Okay, or if you want me to go to detail with anything, please do not hesitate. So this change, as I mentioned, our government knew months in advance that the conflict will happen. Of course, they didn't share it with us. They were like, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Stay calm. Nothing's going to happen. But we were preparing slowly. Our military, our army was moved to the eastern border. We were on a high alert as a military, but still people didn't knew at all. They kept it secret for obvious reasons. And as our then Minister of Defense said that, okay, few weeks ahead of the conflict, he knew exact date of the start, and then it was just a matter of precising the hours. So when it happened, he got the news in less than 10 minutes after the war broke out, after they crossed the borders. After the Russians crossed the borders, he knew. He informed the president, the prime minister, and so on. And luckily for us, as I can say, the Russians started the attack from north and from east, and they didn't open the front on the western Ukraine, which our military planners were quite surprised that it didn't happen, but probably Belarus didn't want to get involved that much. They just provided backup for the Russians, or safe space, so to say. First few days were quite crucial. I mean, we were very nervous watching the news about fighting around Kiev. Especially there's a nearby airport called Hostomel, where the fierce fights were taking place, because this was the airport that even Ukrainians knew that Russians were about to land their special forces, which were to eliminate President Zelensky and his government. So they fought very, very, very heavily for the airport, and they were actually able to repel Russians off. And that's when the very famous Twitter video of President Zelensky came out, because everyone was like, okay, now where's the comedian? And he was like tut, which means here. He posted the video of himself in the streets of Kiev with the government officials. He was like, I'm here. President of the Parliament's here, everyone's here, the Minister of Defense is here, so we are not going anywhere, which was great boost for not Ukrainians, but also for us, their neighbors. And then what happened was that they asked for military equipment. It's not like Ukrainians didn't have any. I mean, they are 40 million people, big nation. Like they are our largest neighbor, even though we don't know much about them because they are not in the EU, so we don't travel there a lot. We see them as less developed, not so interesting, and so on. It's like, okay, it's cheap holidays if you want, and maybe for Eastern Slovaks, it's like, okay, I'll go for some shopping to the Western Ukraine because I can get my washing powder or something much more cheaper than in Slovakia. But that's it. And what we kind of underestimated them because since 2014 they have been training their military enormously. They hired foreign experts from NATO who trained them not in terms of working with the modern Western military equipment, but also in terms of tactics and modern warfare. And also that's why we kind of overestimated Russians. We have a saying that Russia is not Russian army is not the second strongest in the world anymore, because it's not even second strongest in Ukraine. What happened is that Ukraine military was quite well prepared for this, even though after some time they happened to struggle with lack of munition, lack of weapons. So they asked us as NATO, as Western countries, as the whole world, they asked to deliver, to give them some weapons. And Slovakia was one of the first countries that did this. And we started with something really huge. We gave them for free air defense system S-300, which is Soviet-made air defense system. It's a complex system which can cover like whole city. Let's say it can cover area of whole Kiev, or several hundred square kilometers if you want. So it's quite sophisticated weapon, and we deliver it to them immediately. It was within weeks after the conflict broke out. Afterwards, we gave them some of our armored vehicles for free as well, and then we gave them our jets, fighting jets, MiG-29s. The thing is that all those weapon systems weren't usable for Slovakia anymore, because as we agreed on sanctions on Russia, we weren't able to buy any spare parts for those weapons. So we gave Ukrainians everything we had that was Soviet-made or Russian-made, because we were no longer able to keep them working. But Ukrainians had those spare parts, so they were able to make it work. So we gave it to them. Obviously, in Slovakia, opposition parties and radical right-wing extremists, they call that it's, well, you are destroying military potential of Slovakia, you are giving away our weapon systems, and we don't have anything for it. But the thing is that for the air defense system, we got 4 air defense systems from US, Patriots. Like, they are not ours, but they were provided for free from governments of US, of Germany, Italy, and I think Dutch. Yeah, Dutch were also there. So our airspace is covered better than before. As for the fighting jets, we are waiting for delivery of F-16s from the United States. They should come in, yeah, they should come later this year, I think so. So we ordered them way before the conflict, but it takes some time to deliver them. So now our allies from Poland and Hungary and Czech Republic are helping with our airspace. And yeah, then we also sold some self-propelled howitzers. Zuzana, it's our own product. They are quite good in terms of international competitions. I don't want to get into details, but we sold 8 of them directly to Ukraine, and other 8 were paid by governments of Germany, Norway, and Denmark. So all in all, Slovakia, well, we did quite a good deals. We helped our neighbor in need, and we got something for it as well. And I mentioned the armored vehicles. For those, we got some older tanks from Germany, which is a great deal as well. So this went on. Also, we provided lots of humanitarian equipment, medical equipment as well to Ukraine. There are now public calls for donations to Ukrainian army, to Ukrainian hospitals, NGOs who deal with migration. So yeah, we are kind of, as per GDP, we are one of the most generous donors to Ukraine, but it's for obvious reasons. We are the neighbors. And thing is that even though we are struck by the war and its impact, we still rather keep it on the eastern border of the Ukraine, or in the eastern Ukraine, rather than on our borders. So we really don't want Russia as our neighbor. That's why we will support Ukraine, probably even after now we had our election and the government will change. So, yeah, any question?
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was going to ask that because you had elections 2 weeks
Yes.
ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And pro-Russian guys won.
Yeah, that's what headlines
So
of the news said.
How would that work with the situation?
Well, the thing is that there was a great dissatisfaction among people with support to Ukraine because people believed that really why should we get involved in the conflict? It's between United States and Russia. It's between Nazi Ukraine government and Russia, and who else? We should stay out of there. We can maybe deliver some humanitarian aid, but not military and so on. So as I told you, the opposition party, they capitalized on that, and now they got into power. And during the campaign, their rhetoric was obviously very, I would say, sometimes pro-Russian, but definitely anti-helping Ukraine. So that's one thing. The other thing is that we don't have any more weapon systems to give to Ukraine. Like really, we run out of the stock. And if we donate or even sell them something more, we would diminish our military power, which we cannot afford at the moment. So there's nothing left for us to give them. So yeah, the government will probably hold its words that we won't give any more weapons to Ukraine because we won't.
But the rhetoric would be pro-Russia? I mean, I know, no, without considering the weapons thing.
Yeah, otherwise, I don't think, because in their programs, they want to stay in the EU, they want to stay as a member of the NATO, so they will probably just get in line. Yeah, they will probably become something more like Hungary, which openly on like what they promoted was we're not going to get involved, we are not sending any weapons, anything, but in reality they allowed weapon transits through the country and so on. So there was big difference between what was said and what was done, and so it will be in Slovakia probably as well. But yeah, the newspapers titles were very, very disappointing. It was a great advertisement for Slovakia. So just to wrap up somehow the military side of the conflict, what we can expect is probably a long-lasting frozen conflict. Because even though Russian military uses all tactics, their technical capabilities are bad as well. They are using tanks which are 60 years old. It's just food for cannons, as are their soldiers. They are dying like on enormous numbers there. So are Ukrainians, but in terms of Russia, it's even bigger because they don't care. They'll just, we need to send, I don't know, 10,000 soldiers there, so they will. Will they die? Yeah, probably, yeah. But that's what happens. So, it will be a long-lasting conflict, and what we rely on is that Russia will somehow crumble down economically. So we put on sanctions, we stop importing gas, we will stop import oil, which is, especially in Slovakia and Hungary, we have factories that are dependent on Russian oil, which is brought directly through the tube. So we asked for a permission to import Russian oil for some period of time, and then we have to somehow figure out what we'll do next. But it would be crucial. It would destroy our companies, which are quite huge and important in terms of our economy. It would destroy them if they were suddenly cut off the Russian oil. So yes, it is complicated, but still we did everything we possibly could in terms of economic sanctions, and we hope that the Russian economy, which was mostly focused on exporting natural resources, exporting gas, exporting oil, will crumble down and will not be able to support war any longer. But this might take, I don't know, 2 years, so to say. And even though Russians are well known for their ability to survive even harsh conditions, and on one hand it's admirable, on the other it leads to, you know, they are fiercely nationalistic, and what it might cause is like, okay, we don't care if we don't have quality food on our tables. We don't care if we are starving. We don't care if we don't have technology like, I don't know, cell phones and Western cars, Western clothes. Of course, the rich ones can afford it always. They can always buy it on the black market, or they can somehow travel abroad and buy it there. Middle class and the poorer ones, less affluent Russians, they will somehow just get over it, and that's problematic because they can last very long in such conditions. So, and also we are not dependent only on gas and oil. Slovakia is, for example, highly dependent on nuclear fuel as well for our nuclear plants. After France, we are the second largest nuclear energy producer in Europe, and we are highly dependent on that. And we are bringing our nuclear fuel rods from Russia. Now we are in debate, or we are in talks with American producer of the nuclear fuel, but it again will take some years to finish the deal. So we still have an exemption from those sanctions on that. And what the conflict caused? Well, actually, everything that Vladimir Putin was afraid of. We have united EU and united NATO. Well, of course, there's Hungary, there's Turkey playing its own game still, but they are quite united in terms of helping Ukraine. NATO has broadened. We have a new member, Finland, and Sweden is on its way. After they will resolve its issues with Turkey. Obviously, there has to be some troublemaker. We, in Central Europe, what happened? There were two troublemakers within the EU, Hungary and Poland, both dealing with their own issues. In Poland, it was judiciary powers. In Hungary, it was Orban's holy war against NGOs and media. So they were kind of like holding hands together, voting against everything, you know, blocking the European Union. And now Poland, which has always been very anti-Russian, said to Hungary, okay, we are not friends with you anymore because you don't support Ukraine. You are kind of pro-Russian, so you are lonely in your fight. We are not dealing with you anymore. The war also accelerated process of admission of Ukraine to European Union and NATO, and it started a wave of military modernization all across the Europe, but especially in on the eastern flank of the alliance of the NATO. So Slovakia, Poland especially. If you have any weapons, just sell it to Poland; they will buy it, no matter what it is. They're buying like crazy from Americans, from Koreans, you know, like who's ever thought? So Poland is buying everything. It also started expansion of defense industry, which most of it is paid by European money. For example, in Slovakia, we will produce ammunition for howitzers, and the whole project will be paid by European Union money. So it's good for us, sadly to say, that the war happened, because now we have extra jobs, we have extra support for our defense industry. And yeah, and as I said, as for the migration, it's the greatest wave of migration within Europe since the war in Yugoslavia. Countries failed to respond to that initially. The NGOs and various charities, Christian charities mostly, were on the spot right as the conflict began, and they were providing care to migrants, to those women and children. And state kind of got involved, let's say, week or 2 weeks after. So really the role of NGOs and charities was enormous in this one. Then to deal with this, our government came up with a system of funding. If you happen to have a spare room in your apartment, or you had an apartment, you could have accommodate Ukrainian refugees, for which you get some money from the government, and also you could have some money from the Ukrainians, but not much. There was some limit to that, and so it was a nice system, but it fired back, because obviously we were after COVID crisis. With the war going on, the prices went up, inflation went up. Also, we had energy crisis because we weren't able to import gas from Russia. So the prices of energies went up, and people were, not satisfied, and they were like, okay, so we are paying for the Ukrainians, but I'm not getting any money for my energies, for my monthly, and also food's getting more expensive, and so on. So people started to blame Ukrainians somehow. Which they didn't realize, that the amount of money we provided to those Ukrainian refugees through this scheme of funding was really like nothing, few millions of euros, nothing expensive, nothing we couldn't afford. When it was divided among our population, it was less than 10 euros per citizen. So it was nothing, like really like 4 coffees. That's it.
I have a question regarding the support that the other European countries still have for the Ukrainian war, because the nature of the war changed from a very, at least in the early stages, a very dynamic war, fast conquest of territories on the part of the Russians. It is slowly turning into a war of attrition.
Yes.
And that means a very different dynamic, not to blow it out of proportion, but images come to mind from the First World War, for instance, where the expectations were on the part of the governments to have a very quick war and to settle the scores, and that's it. But now European countries, at least if you read the media, you see that there are some signs of cracks within the support that governments have, and the people in general, for the support in the Ukrainian war. So you mentioned before that the Russians still support the war because of this rhetoric of nationalism. But what are the possibilities that the common European citizen will still be willing to bear the costs of the war in Ukraine?
Well, this has a lot to do with strategic communications of our governments, because they were not all of European governments were able to explain to the citizens that we have to support Ukraine, because then after the Ukraine in case the Ukraine will lose the war, NATO countries, especially those in Baltics, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, they are next. And this will bring whole alliance into the conflict. So, and still, you rather have a big 40 million nation associated with the European Union, even if not member directly. You won't have you won't have them associated. They are one of the top producers of wheat, of dairy products in the world. So quite important for us as well, and it's important from the global perspective as well, as you happen to maybe know, that the disruption of export of Ukrainian wheat caused troubles in other markets in Africa, in Asia, mostly the countries who are importers of Ukrainian goods. So yeah, and for the state of the conflict, well, yeah, it will probably look like that. Many people were disappointed by the counter-offensive Ukrainians did this summer. It's too slow. You weren't able to retake much of the territory, but you have to be aware of the fact that they are fighting through defensive lines, and those defensive lines are, in some cases, 2 or even 6 kilometers wide. It's like territory which is there are mines everywhere. They are like various kind of traps and trenches. So it's not like walk through a park, right? It's very difficult to get through, and it costs many lives of many Ukrainians. I happen to have a girlfriend from Ukraine, and her brother was a lieutenant in the military, and he was at the front, and I saw him after he got back, and he was quite a jolly fellow before, like he was doing his safe jobs for military intelligence. He was, sitting behind a computer and doing nothing all day, and it was before the conflict, right? It was, and after the conflict, well, he told me he was terrified because he was 300 meters from the Russians. There were like rockets everywhere, and his role there was to persuade Ukrainian soldiers to go out of the trenches and fight. What is like to persuade someone to go out and most likely to die. So those soldiers told him, okay, shoot me right there. I don't care. I won't follow that order. And he had to persuade them to somehow do the job or the duty or whatever. So definitely that's not an easy, and I think we in Europe are kind of softened by the peace we enjoyed for decades, and we do not realize that even the slightest progress of Ukraine is paid by many lives and casualties and people who are affected for the rest of their lives. So I think we cannot be that pushy towards Ukraine, but still, it's our people are kind of naive in this sense. So yeah, we expect it to be like some kind of Call of Duty video game or something like that. Oh, it's quick, like, yeah, this one mission and I'm done by the noon. It's not like that, definitely.
Robert,
Yes.
Following that, what is the future of the war and the role of China in this?
Well, China, that's an interesting case. China has kind of ambivalent approach to the conflict because interfering in one's internal affairs goes against long-standing China's policies. So on one hand, they did not appreciate Russia interfering or dealing with Ukraine as they did, because that was whatever was going on in Ukraine, they had a right to do so, and Russia did not have a right to intervene, according to Chinese. But also, Chinese says that, okay, but Russia has somehow a right to, manage their sphere of influence and their neighborhood. So, which puts China in because they are trying to do the same. They are trying to manage their neighborhood, the South China Sea issues, issues with North Korea, issues in Southeast Asia, Taiwan, obviously. So that's why they, and if China would admit that it's okay to interfere into internal affairs of one's country, then they would say it's okay if United States would interfere in their business with Taiwan. Yeah, so China is in a bit of a pickle. However, I think that it's interesting because Russia, in the long term, will have problem with China, especially in Siberia, where there are much more Chinese living now than Russians. And what might happen is when China will be running out of fresh water, let's say. So they will just, somehow ask for territory occupied by, or where most of the population is Chinese by origin. And what will do Russia then, right? So, because you may apply the same logic as Russia did apply to Ukraine, you may apply that same logic from Chinese perspective. But they don't need to use military power to do that because Russia now is so focused on selling gas and oil to China. Because China is energy-hungry economy, they will need more, and natural gas is a great alternative to coal. So Russia is somehow counting on that. China is welcoming because they can buy the gas for very low prices. But they do not have pipelines yet, and pipelines sufficient enough to somehow compensate for the loss of European market. So yeah, and China's probably not involved in delivering military equipment, but there might be some cases of delivering dual-use equipment, which is something you can use in civilian technology as well as military technology, chips and some other. Yes.
It doesn't seem clear to me the role of the NATO. I think it's OTAN in Spanish.
Yes.
Because I think they have a military role in the diplomatic relationship, but I don't seem clear the importance of the action that the alliance made in the conflict in Ukraine with Russia.
Well, yeah. So NATO is a defensive pact. So it goes on this principle that if one is attacked, then everybody is attacked, and everybody has to answer the call for help. With little asterisks, because it says that you have to help. You have to help if you are a member of NATO, but you don't need to help in terms of troops and soldiers and military equipment. You just have to help, let's say, in terms of material help. Okay, so yeah, let's imagine that United States are being attacked and Slovakia responds by sending prayers and tents, right? This might happen, but then if Slovakia gets attacked, so can do United States. So you are counting somehow that they will be, they will help you in some means that will matter. And NATO, in terms of Ukraine, well, they cannot get involved directly, of course, because Ukraine is not part of the NATO, and so we have like there is nothing that obliges us to help. But given the fact that there's a war on our borders, NATO has to be monitoring the situation, and it's coordinating military help to the Ukraine. trying to somehow find the compensations for countries. Let's say Slovakia gave some weapons to Ukraine. Other countries didn't have any weapons to give, so they gave us money, let's say, and this was coordinated through NATO. They have also special format of meetings, the heads of the state, ministers of defense, where they discuss the ongoing situation. They help with their expertise, but NATO cannot get involved directly as an organization. The thing is, Ukraine wants to get into the NATO because of the guarantees it provides, and we would like to have them here because after the war will end, they will be probably the largest and most skilled military on the continent. And
After Russia.
yeah, we will see. We will see about we will see about the size of the Russian army after Russia. We will see about the size of the Russian army afterwards. But thing is that yeah, we will probably love to have them, but the territorial issues have to be resolved firmly, because a country which has territorial issues cannot be part of the NATO, because then then instantly NATO would be in conflict. So,
Security risk.
yeah, it's a security risk, definitely. So we are looking for some ways how to fasten the process of integration. But yeah, it will happen someday, definitely. But to answer the question directly, NATO is not involved, but it does a lot of work behind the scenes in terms of coordination among member states, and also helping to secure our borders. Right now in Slovakia, we have armies from 9 countries deployed as to enhance our security, because we have a rather small army, about 13,000 soldiers. According to the projections, we should be able to stand alone in the conflict for 2 days. That's maximum. And in those 2 days, there should be some reinforcement coming from the West. But for those 2 days, we should use our 13,000 soldiers to somehow hold the enemy off.
It's really scary.
Yeah, but that's I think that's quite a realistic projection. Yeah, but still, we are a very small country. You can travel through Slovakia like okay, we don't have a highway from the east to the west still, but we will soon, I hope. But I would say that it's about 400 kilometers, so it's really nothing.
Bigger than Holland.
So so and all the eastern flank from Estonia through Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria, they were reinforced, and soldiers from other NATO countries were stationed there. So it's in hypothetical case that Slovakia or other NATO eastern flank country will be attacked, it's not only attack on the country, but due to the deployment of other armies, it's also attack on them. So we have, I think, Dutch, Germans, Czechs, Canadians, Portuguese as well. I think we had some Spanish soldiers. I mean, they are rotating, so it's still someone else. But this is what NATO did. That they somehow try to protect the eastern flank of the alliance.
I'm curious because you earlier said that Moldavia was a special case in this conflict, right?
Yes. Okay. So part of the Moldavia is actually occupied by I would say pro-Russian forces, and it was. For some time, for some period of the conflict, it was expected that Russians will attack Ukraine from Moldavia, from this region. Due to the fact that Moldavia is quite small, quite poor, socially and economically not that developed country, the possibility of causing some unrests, some protests to overthrow the government were highly likely, and it would cause a big trouble for Ukraine, obviously, because then they would be attacked not only from east and north, but also from southwest. Luckily, also Belarus was not involved directly. There were not so many attacks coming from that side, but yeah, the bombing rates are very common in Ukraine, especially after some visits in Kiev, some maybe some declarations and some agreements. There are always massive rocket attacks on the civilian infrastructure, mostly. Yes.
What will be the role of countries like Iran?
Well, Iran is obviously pro-Russian. They are delivering technologies, especially drones, which are not that sophisticated, but they'll do the job. And in case the job is to, bomb something or to destroy, that's fairly easy to manufacture. So that's the role of Iran. And also, I don't want to draw any complicated scheme there or some or some conspiracy, but maybe even supporting Hamas to escalate the conflict with Israel might be somehow done in cooperation with Russia, just to refocus them on now supporting Israel as well, not only Ukraine. So but yeah, that might be the role of Iran. Obviously, Iran, with its strong anti-Western policy, would gladly play the role. And yes, the war has been a great, so to say, sadly, an advertisement for their products, especially the drones. Yeah.
Another question. How is Russia seen from the Western European countries in the following sense? Is it seen more or less like a crazy guy named Putin is trying to redraw the map? Or is it rather seen as a continuum of Russian expansionism, more with the historical dimension? How is that seen? Is Putin, is it just Putin or is it Russian imperialism?
Well, the thing is that there are so many, like there's the leader of the Russian opposition, his name is, I forgot always, he's in prison.
Yeah, I know who you mean. It's like with the V, Fadani?
Navalny,
exactly.
Navalny. So he's kind of opposition to Putin, right? He's persecuted heavily. He's in prison. Thing is that he's maybe more nationalistic than Putin himself. Like he's extra nationalist. And some people praise him. Oh, that he will replace Putin and it will be so nice and great with Russia. No, he won't. No, he won't. As for Ukraine, he's probably even more radical than Putin. So there's no real alternative in Russia. Russians are under the influence of propaganda, state propaganda, for 100 years. And it somehow changed its narratives over the time, of course, but still, they are brainwashed from this point of view. If you sometimes we get across the news and various TV shows where Russian intellectuals are debating, and those are crazy ideas. They're like, okay, throw some nuclear bombs on them, nuke them totally, annihilate the whole nation, or yeah, nuke the Europe. There's a NATO meeting in Brussels, nuke them. Nuke everyone. Those are the debates on the national television in Russia, and they are denying the basic historical truths that, for example, Soviet Union was for 3 years a partner of Nazi Germany. They completely deny this part of the history. Absolutely, like it never happened. We didn't divide Poland between Nazi Germany and Soviet Union. No, it didn't happen. And you know, those are things that you can. I have a colleague who was in Russia, and she visited a place where the kind of Russian version of concentration camps was called Gulag. And so she visited this Gulag, and she was standing right in front of it, and she was talking to a Russian guy who said it never happened. There was nothing like Gulags, and she's like, we are standing right in front of it. It's behind us. No, it's just a fake propaganda. So it's not possible to have a rational debate over history, over geopolitics with Russian people in general anymore. So this is part of the problem, and the other part of the problem is that we had Iron Curtain in Europe. You probably heard about it. It ran through the eastern Germany here, then Czechia, Slovakia, Hungary, and through here down. Yeah, there was Iron Curtain, divided Europe into the democratic capitalist West and totalitarian communist East. And what happened is that we have quite a fresh experience with communism. Like, let's say 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago, we were still a communist country. So we know what Russian influence means. We know what having Russian soldiers on our soil means, because Czechoslovakia was occupied by Russians for 21 years. So we are very aware of that, at least our elites, so to say. And in the West, they forgot. And you probably saw how French President Macron tried to talk to Putin to make some sense. And he called with him and was so disappointed when Putin didn't listen to him. I talked to him, and he said, like, no, I don't care. And he was so upset. And our Eastern European leaders or Central European leaders were like, okay, what did you expect? Like, yeah, that's what we told you guys. Don't play with him nicely. Be more direct. Be more stricter. Don't expect much of him. And what happened is that Germany, one of the engines of the whole European integration, right, the most powerful nation within the European Union, they were very pro-Russian. And the thing is, they built a pipeline called Nord Stream 2, which went from Russia to directly to Germany. Why is that important? Because other pipelines for gas were running through Belarus, Poland to Germany, and then through Ukraine, Slovakia, Czechia to Germany. In order to not send the gas through Ukraine, because every transit country gets paid for gas which runs through. So in order to move the Ukraine out of the equation, Russians and Germans agreed that they will build a pipeline through the sea directly. We all oppose that. Slovakia, not only because it would diminish our role as a transit country, it also would diminish geopolitical importance of Ukraine. And we know that after this happens, well, anything can happen, literally. So we opposed it, but Germany was, no, it's a great deal. We'll handle it. Don't worry. And we opposed it for years, for like 15 years. And then Russia attacked Ukraine, and we forced Germany to shut down the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. There was enormous pressure on that. And after some time, the pipeline got blown up. So we don't know who did it. Could be both sides. I don't want to get into any speculations, or yeah, probably it was Russians, but who knows? And the thing is that it showed that Western European countries underestimated Russia, and they didn't have the experience we had, and they kind of like shushed us. Yeah, you don't know what you're talking about, and we can build friendly relations with Russia. And we were like, beware, it's not going to be that easy. But they just didn't listen. So yeah, that's something where they underestimated us, and now we're like, we told you so, told you so, yeah, right now our experts on the matter are way more heard on the European forums. So hopefully we will have some. We'll be able to help them somehow. Also, there are already talks going on how to rebuild Ukraine after the conflict. It will have to be a complex rebuild of the whole country, not only from point of view of infrastructure like roads, hospitals, schools, because everything, like there are whole cities that were demolished, bombed to the ground. But also in terms of rule of law, in terms of institutions, fight against corruption, because you are running a country which is in war, so obviously corruption happens. You are not doing things by the book, which is okay because you are in a war. But once the conflict's over, you need to address the goals set by European Union in order to become a member. We have strict policies on democratic values, democratic institutions. So this might be a problem for Ukraine afterwards. And also the things like very, very soft power things, but civil society, free independent NGOs, culture as well, right? Academia that would be independent from the government and from the state in sense of some narrowing of thinking and academia freedoms. So this is something that we would like to help Ukraine with. We are already developing some plans how to deliver, and hopefully we will be able to do so. But I will share your thoughts on our experience with transformation I think on Wednesday, or it's tomorrow. The lecture on
I think it's tomorrow.
Case of Slovakia. Yeah, then so tomorrow. Any questions? Any more? Yeah.
So how about Zelensky? Because in Latin America here, we're discussing a lot about, diminishing quality of democracy, all the Sidla, Levitsky type of argument of democracy is falling down, but not with a coup, right? So will he return to civil life after the war? I don't know if, or do you think there might be some authoritarian temptation there?
Well, I can't really tell. We didn't have this problem in Europe for decades.
I know.
So given his promises that he would like to join European Union, he would like to join NATO somehow, he will need to comply with our demands. But also I can see the temptation here, and I think somewhere deep down he's pro-democratic, but running country for more than 2 years, maybe 5 years, country in a state of war might change a man. So and also it will change how things are, or it changed how things were running in Ukraine. So it might be very problematic for him to get back. But still, I don't see any relevant opposition to him right now. And after they will hopefully victoriously end the war, he will be a great national hero. So I think even after the war, he has some presidential mandates ahead of him, definitely, and how he will be able to handle Ukrainian issues, especially corruption, which was issue even before the war. There was a great deal of corruption. How he will handle those will maybe affect if he will be elected again or not. But yes, it will require a lot of work and probably a lot of foreign expertise. One of our ministers of finances was advisor to former President Poroshenko, and he was supposed to be named a minister of finance in Ukraine as well, but he didn't get the citizenship. But he was the most prominent expert on transformation with experience from Slovakia, and he is very open in his interviews that corruption was enormous problem in Ukraine. And that's something, you have to change the mindset of the whole country, not only the elites, because it's in Slovakia it's same. You go to see your doctor and you'll bring him a bottle of alcohol. I don't know why we do that, but
Maybe you're just prison.
yeah, and yeah. So that's corruption starts at even at the lowest levels, and then it kind of moves up. So this is something we are struggling in Slovakia as well, and I can imagine that given the size of the country and its history, in case of Ukraine, it's probably still even worse. So,
What is Zelensky's term?
well, he was elected in 2019, I think. Yes, 2019, so he should be probably re-elected in 2024, if I'm correct. It's 5 years.
Next year.
Yes, but with war going on, I'm not so sure about how they will handle the situation. According to the polls, he has the support to continue. Like really, there's no opposition for him. Not that like any opposition is forbidden, but there is no leader that would be so capable of doing what he has done. And I think it's enormously pressuring if you see like he accepts visits in Kiev. Then the other day he's giving some online speech on some conference. Then he's traveling somewhere abroad on some meeting, on some forum. Then he's back in Kiev, then he's visiting soldiers on the front. So it must have been a very exhausting time for him. So yeah, fingers crossed for him to be able to continue with that. But I don't think that there will be any change of the power, even if the election will take place. And it probably will, because they will try to show Ukraine as a still democratic country that will somehow be able to vote. Yes, but it will be definitely an interesting case to follow, and I think there will be many international observers for that election as well, because obviously there will be attempts to somehow manipulate the election.
Time is almost up, so perhaps if you have some final thoughts, or else we can continue to our final question. Robert, final thoughts if you want to have like a closing remark.
No,
Last question?
No? Okay, or the students perhaps?
Sure.
No,
if you have any
question? Well, please.
So the future is not good for the war, as I understood from your talk. So what is the likelihood of having these talks between Russia and Ukraine to stop the war, having some kind of agreement?
Well, it's peace talks. The position of Ukraine is very solid on this. Like leave our country and we can start peace talks. Also, the narrative goes that Ukrainians will fight for each meter of the territory. So they want everything back. They want Crimea back. They want Luhansk and Donetsk back. They want everything back as it was before 2014. And any solution that would somehow undeliver might cause a problem to the Ukrainian government and to President Zelensky, because people are expecting that, okay, so many of our soldiers have fallen, we suffered a lot, we are living, for example, they have electricity only a few hours a day. You have electricity for 2 hours, then not for 3 hours, then for 2 hours you have, and then, so, you know, it's a great struggle for the people. And right now there is no mood within the society to give up any land. It might change, yes, and also if you well, the Russians, they did not articulate their their conditions. Well, they pronounced 4 of the regions of the eastern Ukraine as their territory, Crimea as their territory, but the goal of the government is to denazify the Ukraine, because somehow they think that Jewish President Zelensky is a Nazi as well. So yeah, it makes sense in their logic somehow, and yeah, that's their goal. We don't know what does that mean in terms. I mean, there were some proposals for dividing the Ukraine between Russia, Poland, Hungary, something for Slovakia as well. Yeah, because before the Second World War, we owned this part of Ukraine as well. This region, but then we gave it to the Soviet Union. Since then, it's not issue for us, but the Russians thought that it might help, so they wanted to give us some land as well. So there were several proposals from Russian side, none of which was kind of official, none of which was feasible or even anyhow possible. And given the state that Russia is actually losing in Ukraine, they are retreating from their positions slowly, but they are pushed away, and their economy is not very stable, even though they are still somehow managing to function. Given the state of the development, I don't think that any Russian proposal would be reasonable in a sense. So no, I don't see peace talks going on yet. Right now, not. Probably with some change of power in Russia. Yes.
Well, considering the position of Russia and the Ukraine in this conflict, I have a question, and it is there any real chance of a diplomatic solution of this conflict at this point of the war?
Well, the thing is that whatever Russians claim the reason for the war is, they did not tell the whole truth, and the whole truth is that they want to, this Russian kind of imperialism, they want to retake the control of territories of former Russian Empire, which included much of Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Belarus, formerly part of Poland, Ukraine. And the thing is, they consider those areas as well as other former Soviet republics in Central Asia. They consider this as being a Russian world, or so-called Ruski Mir, their sphere of influence. And they do not want any of those countries to be part of NATO, part of the EU. Those 3 lucky ones in Baltics, they were lucky because they got into EU and into NATO in the time when Russia was not strong enough to stop them. So they were independent, and Russia was in no position to order them anything. Should it happen now, that they would try to get into the EU or NATO, probably the scenario would be very different. Given the fact that in Estonia, 40% of people are of Russian ethnicity. So it's kind of tricky one. Yeah. They don't, Russia doesn't care about Eastern Ukraine. There's a city, Mariupol, you probably heard of it. It was flattened out, completely bombarded. There's nothing left. Nothing. Hundreds of thousands of people fled the city. It was one of the biggest cities in the country. They don't care. They just seized the city, claim that now we control the territory, and that's it. So they don't care about eastern part of the country. They don't care about Russian-speaking citizens in Ukraine. They just don't want Ukraine to go to NATO, to enter the European Union. That's it. And how to do that is to occupy some of their land, as they did with, for example, Georgia back in 2008. Georgia was also a very promising future member of NATO, possibly European Union, as they occupied South Ossetia, the region. There, they prohibited Georgia to enter the alliance very effectively. So that's that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your rigorous and insightful analysis of this war, which will help our students to interpret what's going on in Ukraine and Central Europe, Western Europe far better. So let's give Professor Vancel a round of applause. I would like to thank each and every one of you for your attendance, and we hope to see you in our next event, which is this Wednesday. No, but that's for.
Okay.
So thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.